sister-in-law didn't get a chance to buy a brick, so she's gonna build it. Unless I can talk her about a patch. Says she's going to be here at 7:11. So why don't we can go ahead and just start. And sure. Hold off on. We're going to tell everybody to start. Okay.
So we're going to start it now?
You guys ready? Yep. So seeing that it's 7:08, I'll call the October 25th meeting of the Roberts Field Advisory Committee to order. We are missing one person to have a quorum, so we're not going to make any decisions until she gets here, but she should be here in about 3 or 4 minutes. So we'll just start with our agenda. Our meeting will start with public input. Is there anything that anybody would like to, from the public would like to express or say? Seeing none. We'll start with updates. So I reached out to Steve Yonley from the DPW for updates, and he didn't reply to me. Didn't provide any kind of response for the updates. But I did meet with, or see Steve Callahan this morning at the playground. Jim and I were there trimming some trees, and Steve was there, and Steve did say that the fencing contractors are going to be starting work on Monday. And I know that the DPW was there today, and I believe yesterday, building the berm in the back of the playground. And Steve Callahan said that the fence contractor is contracted to build not only the black vinyl link chain link fence, but also the 6-foot wooden fence that's going to be on the berm. So those things should start on Monday. Any questions about that? So we don't know anything about what's going to happen with the shade structure, what the timetable is for the tables or the metal benches that are going to be put on concrete paddocks. Mm-hmm. Those are still pending, but we did provide the locations that we'd like to see those at. As an update, the natural play area was worked on over the last couple of weeks. We completed the 2 raised gardens, so the 5 senses garden and the butterfly garden stone walls are all in place, and the soil's in place there. They were both filled with a mix of compost and topsoil, so they should have nice healthy soil for when it's time for planting. The tops of the 5 cents garden were mortared in place yesterday and today, and then the butterfly garden tops are going to be mortared into place later after the DPW finishes their grading work in the open spot that it's located in. The stone dust pathways in place. The animal tracks were installed. The gazing balls were installed on stones. You can see those sort of behind the tree. The climbing rocks adjacent to the climbing structure were put in place, and then 3 of the 6 Chelmsford granite sitting stones were put in place, and those are, you can see there's down the second lower left picture, that's one of the Chelmsford granite sitting stones from La Mesier granite that was put into place. And so those 3 were all sponsored, and we have our sponsor plaques coming tomorrow, so we'll put those in. Maybe even won't do it tomorrow, but maybe it'll be after the rain. So those need to be siliconed into place. So we're really close to having everything all set in place for the natural play area, and I'm really happy with the way things have turned out. things that are still pending for the natural play area. The Kinetic sculpture is still being designed and the prototype's being built, and we'll talk in more detail about that in a few minutes. Chelmsford Mass Rocks is going to locate a basket there with some of their rocks. I don't know, where do you guys stand with that, Sandy?
The basket in the car, I'm gonna go tomorrow just to make sure it's gonna fit
Oh, fit where?
underneath the sign
Okay.
about the whiskey barrel. I'm just hoping it's not gonna be too high.
Yeah, that was going to be a temporary spot, so we might want to try to figure a more permanent spot out
Okay.
for it.
And to fill it with, white stone?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would say you might want to consider wherever the permanent area is, you might want to consider digging a little bit and
Yeah.
just sort of
Yes.
counter-seeking it, so that way it doesn't get
Yep.
tousled.
Mm-hmm.
We went ahead and started just updates, so now we can actually discuss and vote.
Sorry,
That's all right.
delayed with work.
The natural play area sign is gonna fit sort of in this little junction between the new stone pathway and the animal tracks section. And I spoke with John Bowden yesterday and gave him the information that he needed to start working on the sign today. So I expect that we'll be able to work something there. I measured the space today, and there's about a 6-foot wide span of space available for the sign in the natural play area. So I think we can accommodate like a 4-foot wide sign and a 3-foot tall. So that way it doesn't sort of block the view, you know what I mean? So it's lower, but it's still wide enough that it has, because remember on the back, we're gonna have, one side is gonna be a grid of 12 trees, and then one side's gonna be a grid of 12 animals.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be 12 pictures, you know, and then the, whatever the verbiage is, ends up being, and then the front's gonna be sort of the, this is the natural play area, this is the elements of the natural play area, then probably a map with a tree walk or something that works out. But I was thinking the 4-foot by 3-foot probably would be a good size for it. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't go any bigger.
No.
Yeah.
So 3 foot high?
Yeah, maybe 3 foot high, and then the design
'Cause
that we,
that's only about,
6 to 10 inches off the ground, so a little bit of a space.
so 3 foot,
So it's probably,
So
probably like
closer
4
3 foot high with a foot underneath it, so 4 foot high total.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe the top might be sort of that squared end and then rounded on the top, you know, just to kind of give it a little element of style, you know? And then natural player. I haven't seen, John hasn't done any designs, so I don't know how it's gonna, but that's at least what we had talked about before.
Okay.
Yeah, that way it's not plain and square. And, yeah.
Right, and then as far as mounting it, using the cedar posts like we have on the entryway, so it'll be consistent, and then just routing some grooves into it and then setting the sign into the grooves. So it'll just be suspended on the signs like that. So it's kind of a minimalist
Yeah,
sign thing.
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I get the design comps back from John, I'll share them with everyone if it happens prior to the next meeting. Or
So I know I missed the beginning, and I'm sorry. Is there anything about the kinetic sculpture? Is it,
I have more information, and actually I have a slide coming up. on
okay,
that.
and the gardens, did you talk about them much, or?
Only to say that we completed the 2 gardens, the 5 sensory garden and the butterfly garden. Both are filled with compost, a mix of compost and topsoil, and the tops of the 5 sensory garden has been mortared into place. And then the tops of the butterfly garden will be mortared into place once the work's finished, the DPW finishes their work in the back, so they don't step on each other.
So I was curious about the butterfly garden, because it seemed like it changed changed from what we'd talked about.
How so?
The shape, this location.
I don't,
We talked about it being back against where the fence was gonna be, and now it's substantially more in, and I thought it was gonna kind of be along the fence, and now it's kind of a
the problem
circle.
the problem with putting it along in the back of the fence and talking to the DPW was getting the mowers back there and keeping a wide enough area so that it could be mowed. They did the best they could with finding the spot for it based on trying to figure out where the fence was going to go, because it was still sort of a moving target. So they tried to site it so that it would allow for mowers to go around the back and not impede any kind of not make it too small so they couldn't mow it, or make it too big so it would take too many passes to mow.
Okay, it's just a completely different object than it was at this point, so.
I don't agree, but I understand what you're saying.
You mean like you thought it was gonna be like against the fence itself, and then?
Yeah, I mean, if you looked
Not
at
like
any of
you-
the previous drawings, it was kind of like, you know, the fence was here, it was kind of like running along the fence, and it was something you'd go in, and now it's a
Circle.
circle in the middle of
It's always a
things.
circle.
And
I don't know.
I
mean,
thought we'd also talked about it not being a raised bed, but
No, we definitely talked about it being a raised bed and
we also
having a
talked about
stone
it
wall.
not being a raised bed.
The last conversation we had was that there were going to be 2 stone walls, so that's where it netted out. So the other 3 granite sitting stones will be placed probably in the next 2 weeks or so, once the work's done, and then once they're cut. One of the 3 is cut now at LeMazier, and they have to cut the other 2 and then finish the tops.
So now that the butterfly garden's in a different place, where are we planning on putting those stones? Because those were kind of be on either
Kind of the same
side.
spot. No, I think they're going to go kind of in the same. If the butterfly garden's there, then the stones will be sort of on that side, and then the third one will be sort of across from the thing. And we can schedule something to site those once the grading work is done and the fence is in place. I mean, one of the important things is going to be to make sure that wherever we place them, it doesn't impact the flow of the 10-foot gate that's going to be coming in and out.
Right. I guess I'm just surprised if there was all this whatever with and I understand if they need to get back there and whatever, if this was done on the fly, but I'm surprised there wasn't more communication to the rest of the committee about having to move it away from and the reasoning, or, you know, as opposed to just showing up the park and seeing it in a different location than we talked about.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Has anyone verified that the fall zone for the hillside climber does not overlap with the climbing stones that were put in next to it?
So we followed the layout that O'Brien did for their climbing rocks, right? And then we looked at the 2 to 5 area and how the stepping stones interacted with the 2 to 5 area, and actually ended up putting the stones a little bit further apart than they were for the climbing area. So we shared that with Steve Callahan beforehand and then afterwards, and everybody seems to be fine. There's a 6-foot buffer around the exterior of the climbing stones, but I think that the climbing rocks and the man-made thing are more one piece, like the 2 to 5 building stepping stones up to it are. And like I said, it's also consistent with what how O'Brien had laid out, except it's on the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side.
And they're also bigger, I think.
They are bigger, and there's fewer.
Right. I just didn't know whether we'd had it officially.
We discussed it
Verified.
with Steve beforehand, Steve Callahan beforehand, and then afterwards, and he's fine with it, so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
My daughter had fun on them last weekend.
Great. So we need to create a planting plan for the 2 gardens. We talked about that in the last meeting. Is that something that we're going to do, Sandy, or do you want to?
I will, yeah, I can get some people together.
I know you were going to meet with Weston. Did they get back to you at all on
Not Weston Mahoney's.
Mahoney? Sorry.
Ellen's on vacation. She's got the letter requesting a donation, and she'll be back, I think, November 4th, I think is what Linda said, so, yeah.
Okay.
Would you want grasses?
Yes.
We don't know yet. We need to make a plan of these are the plants that we think
Okay.
make the best
Yes,
sense.
I'll use this.
But I think we need to have a list of the plants that we say this is a list of plants that would work, and then kind of build off of that list rather than just kind of.
Well,
Accepting
I
whatever.
went over there a couple of weeks ago, and she didn't have a big selection of what's left.
Right.
And as she suggested, herbs would go in the spring.
Would miscanthus as a grass be?
Yes, yeah, variegated miscanthus is.
My mom has a
Yep.
stuff she'd like to.
You talked about taking the ones over at the skate park, the skate shed, and cutting them up. Where were you gonna put the ones you dig up and divide? Where were you gonna move those to?
I don't know, I think once we have a blessed list of plants, I think then we can talk about
Okay.
what goes where, but, I mean, those are options. I don't know if those are safe for kids to touch and be around or not. So that's why I think it's important that we, have a list first before we
Okay, I'll
start
get
moving
with
them.
her early next week, go over the lender and look and see what they have there, so. Mhm.
I would think anything tall, because if we do use something like stuff that's over at the skate shack, that stuff tends to be taller. So I would think that would probably be better suited for like a butterfly garden, so that it wouldn't block
No,
views.
okay, we're talking two different things. The butterfly garden will be low. Butterfly garden, the plants, you're not gonna have grass in the butterfly garden, right?
I would say the butterfly garden would probably be a better candidate for having taller plants, because it's behind things, so it's not gonna block
Oh, I'm
views.
sorry, you're right, you're
The
right.
5th Century
Okay.
garden would be better suited
Right.
for shorter plants.
Right. Butterfly garden is where the kinetic wind sculpture is, right?
Correct.
You want grass around the base of that, correct?
It may be grass, I don't know, I mean, we need to have a
Kids
list.
be able to climb up there?
They can climb anywhere, so that's why I
Okay.
need to make sure that the plants, whatever plants we put in place are safe for kids to touch and.
They're safe for kids. It's when you're working with the grasses. You know, I'll get more input from Mahoney's, but it's where if you go and try and cut them down, that's when you get, you know, irritation from the barbs on the side of the grass there, so I always do. So.
Right, so we just need to figure out what's okay to put in there, and then we can move forward on
I'll check
that.
into safe plants. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any other questions or comments about where the natural play area is now? Did I mention that the butterfly tops are going to be mortared into place in the next couple
Mhm.
weeks? Okay.
Yes.
All of the replacement bricks have been installed, so the official stamp of completion is done on the last brick campaign, and we kicked off the new brick campaign in the last couple of weeks. So we're selling 4x8 engraved bricks for $100 a piece. They will be replacing blank bricks in the pathway. We'll install those in next summer.
So no more 8x8s, right?
Correct. It's only 4x8s. You can add symbols to your bricks. There's over 80 to choose from. Again, obviously, all the proceeds are going to benefit the playground, and there's order forms at the playground, as well as if you go to friendsofrobertsfield.org, buy a brick, there's forms you can download there, or go to our online store and order it directly with an easy online brick designer. So, and we're going to be filming a 30-second, 60-second spot for that, and then also talking to John Bowden about creating a new sign for the sale to be at the playground. Right now, we just have the tops of the old signs cut off with the URL written on the bottom.
Right.
So, any questions on that? Last meeting, Tip Rotting volunteered to build the little library kiosk, and I spoke with him, and he's going to work on that over the winter and install that in the spring. And that's all the information I have on that. So any questions on that? Did you guys like me to follow up with him? No? Sandbox redesign and rebuild. So I'm guessing you guys are aware that we have issues. The two biggest issues are slippery sidewalks due to the sand spilling over onto the sidewalk, and then drainage. Drainage is a big issue. So the picture on the left is a picture from the, not the most recent rainstorm, but the rainstorm a couple weeks ago. And that's just pretty typical about what happens now with the sandbox. It fills up with water around that middle digger that's there. A few weeks back, I saw Steve there and mentioned to him that we wanted to find some kind of a solution to fix the drainage and to fix the slippery, sandy sidewalks. And his suggestion was that we just add more sand. And also, I wanted to say that Steve Callahan does go to the playground 3 times a week and sweeps the sand back into the area. I wanted to see if we wanted to take any kind of an action on this, to make a recommendation for addressing the slippery sidewalks and then the drainage. And then I just wanted to suggest that one of the solutions might be that we redig this, the sandbox and orient it so that it's got a buffer around the edges that would capture the sand, similar to what's happening on the right-hand side of the sandbox now. The sand gets kicked over, but it falls into the grass, so it doesn't make its way over to the sidewalk. So seemingly that might solve the issue with, on the right, might be a solve for the problem with the sand spilling over. And if we could find a solution for the drainage, when I was speaking with Steve, he said that one solution might be to run underground drainage towards the front of the playground off into the towards the brook, and said that that might cost $3,000 to $4,000 to do that. I don't know how that seems pretty disruptive.
Yeah, I don't know how they would run the pipe.
You'd have to dig underneath everything, and then where the water ends up going is going to be a big issue. I think if we well, let me take a step back. So his take was they were open to filling it with more sand, but not doing anything else. So
What's filling it with more sand going to do? I don't know.
hide the water? I don't know.
I think it would just make more sand on the walkway too, but
Right. It would make this more. Yeah, it definitely would do that.
In the picture on the right, is this handicap digger moved?
Yes. So if we did redig the sandbox, lined it with the black stuff it's lined with now, not fill it up as high as it is filled now, that would allow sort of a step down, right? That would then give you some sort of a seat on the edges. But if we did
Probably
do
just
that,
gonna pool more
I think that
water.
would just pool more water. Yeah, that would.
not necessarily if you were able to break through the compacted parts of the ground and potentially put some kind of a dig some kind of an area out and then fill it with maybe some loose rocks. It might force the water down
How
into.
deep did they go before?
They went about 18 inches.
How deep?
Oh.
They stripped it down to about 18 inches and then they backfilled it. But the problem is they really compacted the soil. So you've got this layer underneath that's preventing water from going.
So it's just soil underneath
Yeah,
the sand.
but it's compacted. They ran their heavy equipment back and forth. They like to do that. But that, really interferes with water percolating through the soil.
So to your point, though, we would need to move the both digging structures, because the handicap structure digger spills over on the corner, which pushes the sand off into that thing, and then kids run through and then slide on that. And then if we did do a buffer of grass between the sidewalk and the digging thing, that would the one in the middle wouldn't be able to spin 360 and dig 360, so it would have to be moved over as well. And that's kind of what the intent was, to show just an idea of this might be a solution, and then if it is, we'd have to move those.
Can we move those without effectively buying new ones? Are they cemented?
I'm assuming so, because they cemented in place the things that hold them in place that they spin on.
Yeah.
So it would just be a matter, I think, of either freeing those things up or potentially buying new things versus the whole new thing that they fit into.
Yeah, you should be able to take them out, and then you'd have to drill into the concrete pad and put a new cylinder in there to drop it in, but.
Potentially, yeah. Or put, even on the, I think for the wheelchair digger, it would be important to have that really go pretty far out into the island of sand,
Yeah.
to keep the sand from coming back into the pathway, concrete pathway.
What kind of sand, I'm sorry, what kind of sand is in there? Was that chosen specifically for that type of, did you guys choose that sand specifically? Is there, because it seems fine to me. Is it really
I
fine
don't know.
sand?
Yeah, I don't know if, I think it's just sand, construction sand that they had. I don't know that there was
It's
any,
not like specific playground sand or anything, or?
I don't know.
I know that there's maybe a rockier type of sand might drain better as opposed to like more
Compactable.
compactable clay-like sand?
But it comes down to, it's like having a bathtub.
Yeah.
It's underneath, so it can drain like a bandit through, but it's still gonna hit that.
So what about putting rocks underneath or something like that? Would that help at all?
But even if you
My
have to
thought was pull the sand back, get a post hole digger, and go down and see if you can get through that compacted layer. If you can, soil fabric with gravel or something like that, backfill it and let it go. It might work, it might
in
not.
one location or?
I'm sorry?
In one location or multiple
You'd
locations?
probably do 4 or 5 of them.
If we moved it over, like on the right, I would support building seating around it.
What does the seating look like in your mind?
Wooden benches.
On the ground or like in the box? How does that work?
Taking up the space instead of grass around it.
So the grass will probably die from the sand getting
Right.
pushed out anyway. So it would be nice to have some seats there if
So
we did build that berm around.
kind of like the seats they have on the pond edge? Is that what you're thinking? I'm just trying to understand what they look like.
That would be nice.
I'm thinking more, I mean, just again, to keep the sand in, I don't understand why the edging is pretty much ground level, right? Why can't we have the edging elevated up, almost like railroad ties, you know?
Trip hazard.
Is that the problem?
Thinking behind it.
Well, I think as long as it's curb height, then it can't be like lower than curb height, but I think she was saying curb height and higher is effectively a thing. But I mean, I don't know the right way to do this.
Like if it was high enough for a
This is
person
not
to
the
sit
only
on it, then
sandbox-
no one's gonna trip over it.
That exists at a playground. Most sandboxes are confined by
Something.
effectively a wooden seating bench system
Something,
around the
yeah.
entirety. Like, this is the weirdest sandbox I've ever seen, honestly. But, I mean, kids love it. It's great. You can run into it. You can't
But that's
confine your
also, I
child
see,
to it.
so when I'm there with my kids, sometimes this is kind of funny, but sometimes I see the parents chasing the kids.
Right.
Because they're not, like,
There's
having
no way
fun,
to
like the kids are
confine
just
them.
like running.
That's me. That's
Right.
me.
Right, and it's so then they're really little, so that's why I was thinking, like, if we had it set up so, I don't know, if the perimeter was 2 feet high.
So say most
and
sandboxes
wide
have.
enough for someone to sit down on,
Right.
there wouldn't be a trip hazard, because someone's gonna run in and trip on it, right? It's gonna be visible, and then.
And it gives
but
you a
it's
head start
high
with
enough
your
where the
small
kids
children.
aren't gonna be able to just run off and take off, and it'll keep it a little confined, it'll keep the sand in.
I
If
mean,
you
on the
do-
plus side, we all get to run across it. If you just want to go from the swings to the, right now, there's no
Well, there's no-
blockage whatsoever to run
Yeah.
across it, so that's great. But yeah, mostly it's little kids in there, and it is nice if you have a barrier for them to.
Because I've also seen middle schoolers run from the swings to the big structure, right through the sandbox,
Through little kids.
right next to little kids, and, you know, not really thinking. So that's why if we, I agree, moving it to the middle, still having the buffer on the edges, but we should, I don't know, I just think we should build something around it that's of
And
enough
maybe,
height that you can sit on it.
maybe if it goes wider, it doesn't have to go as deep as it does now.
Deep, what do you mean?
Into the picture depth, as in you're looking at the picture. Like, if currently it's shaped like this, we turn it more like this. So it's not substantially huger, it's just more like,
Yeah, I don't know if the, I don't think the one on the right, it wasn't, at least in my perspective,
Yeah.
bigger, wider than it is on the left. I think you're stealing some of the grass area from the right than you are the left. At least that was the intent.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's not to scale, so you just gotta use your
It's just an idea,
imagination.
just to show kind
Yeah.
of what the thinking was, because it was kind of tough.
Right.
So I think, so here's what I think our next steps are. I don't sense that the DPW is going to take this project on, so I think we are going to have to hire somebody to do it and pay for it out of these additional monies that we have to fund things that we've raised. So I've asked Steve a couple times, if we do go down that path, are we going to be responsible for overseeing the work, or are they going to be responsible for overseeing the work? And how is that whole thing going to happen? And I haven't gotten a response yet.
Like if we hire somebody, you mean, are we gonna have to deal with the person and timing?
Right,
and
basically
all
what we
that?
did with the natural play area.
Right, probably then.
Probably. I would say that if we do this, though, the way we've been talking about, we were just talking about, enclosing the whole area. Obviously, we can't enclose the whole area because there's a whole handicap side to it.
Right.
So maybe we do bars effectively on either side and leave both. You'll have the ability to run right from the little kids area up to the play area, but you can't go to the swings and get run over, and you can't go to the big kids area. If you put bench seating effectively along the two sides, that would still give you.
The only thing I'd say to that is if you don't have that backing, like say this is the playground, you don't have this part, and then you have, say, a parent standing here and the kid just bolts off. I don't know. I'm just trying to think
It
of-
still gives you
little bit of-
two less,
Right.
bars of, I think it's better than the 360 degrees of freedom that they have. It gives you 2 degrees less of freedom, which improves your chances of catching your child. And it also, what I really like about, from what you were just saying about kids running across that are bigger, not only that, but little kids run out of the little area into where the swings are going and get
Right.
hit by the swing. So
Yeah,
I
that's
kind
what
of
I
like the
too.
idea of blocking the ability for big kids to run in or little kids to run towards the swings.
I would
They
imagine
can
that's
climb,
yeah.
but
The cause of some of the sand getting onto that sidewalk anyway is being able to go directly from the sandbox to that sidewalk.
oh yeah,
Right.
that's exactly, yeah.
So if there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
spot where they can clean their feet off, or if they can't get that way,
Right.
because kids aren't throwing. I've never seen kids just throwing sand onto the sidewalk. It's usually probably
Oh,
from.
I have, but it's
Show
okay.
this little picture of a
Oh,
girl
yeah.
going into the sandbox and taking it very carefully, putting it on the sidewalk.
Okay, so maybe.
And then went back. for
But
seconds.
I do think a good
But you're-
portion is coming out from kids running
Yes.
off that direction towards the swings.
All good. I think it's all good points to relocate it more in the middle and then build a buffer that you can use for seating. Kind of a,
That way, at least
Two
you
and one.
direct them to more little kids areas. They can only run towards the little kids areas or over to the natural area for food.
So I think what I'm hearing is that we definitely want to move forward with the recommendation to redesign.
I think it's a problem the way it
And
is, so
dig.
yeah, I agree.
Right, so the committee, just a straw poll, we all agree that we need to move forward with the recommendation to redo the sandbox.
yes.
It's
Yeah.
worth it.
Can we, does anybody want to volunteer to put together sort of the specs of what we would want to see done? A lot of what you guys have talked about, I don't have any experience with sandboxes, so
I mean,
That's the level of-
I'm happy to research it and find out, what would need to happen for these things to be moved. And I think that the problem is more the sand being on the sidewalks than the drainage. That seems like the
That's
bigger
probably the
safety
bigger,
issue.
yeah.
The
The only
drainage
thing
is
that-
annoying, but you kind of expected it.
well,
to a
it
degree.
becomes an issue when it's gonna seriously impact the lifespan of the digger, because that thing is just sitting
It'll
in
rust
water.
out and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's not made for that.
There was another thing I was thinking too, and a couple of parents asked me about this, is why is there no shade over the sandbox? And so I don't know if it's something, I know I've seen this in other places where in the middle, you get a pole, it goes up, you get this big metal kind of umbrella looking thing that goes over it, right? And that would help with the drainage, because the water would kind of, if it was,
Were you here when we discussed the shade structures?
So the last couple of meetings, we had
We've had a lot of
a
conversations.
discussion about, they're about $7,000. There's two types. There's just a straight pole, there's a cantilever pole, and there was discussion in the committee in the last meeting that we should wait until the trees and the things that other things that we're gonna do in there are in place before we spend the money or go down the road of spending money for it.
In the main
Okay.
shade structure and see where the shade from the main shade structure actually hits at what time of day, because it's right across from it, so the morning sun's gonna be over there. Also, if you're not gonna have a shade structure that's gonna go over the whole sand.
Oh, no,
Right.
yeah, it's not. gonna
In
be the
which
whole
case,
thing.
you're
Yeah.
effectively decreasing the chance of the sun getting rid of the water when you shade it.
Okay.
Because it's gonna pool out, it's gonna pool anyway, because it's still gonna rain onto the areas where it's not covered and then kind of
Right.
find the lowest spot.
But we could include that in the list of specs if that was something that we wanted to do. So, rather than researching a list of things that need to be done to fix it, could we put together sort of the specifications of this is what we think the sandbox should include? You know, it should be an island. It should be bordered with something. There should be seating in these areas. It should only be filled to X amount of capacity. You know, we should use a certain type of sand, whatever those things are. Are you willing to?
I am, yeah.
Okay, great. Was that something you'd be willing to present at the next meeting?
Sure.
Excellent.
Yeah, this looks like a sandbox made out of exactly the same black pieces that we have, and it's just not filled to the top with the black
Right.
pieces. So,
And the black pieces aren't buried,
well, it's,
not really.
yeah, not nearly as much anyway.
So I've asked Steve, and I've asked Steve Callahan, and I've asked Megan if they make different sizes, widths, or heights of that border stuff that they use.
That's from Compim, isn't it?
And they both sell the same. Compim and O'Brien sells the same stuff. They just sell them cheaper, Compim.
Oh, okay.
And nobody seems to know that they've ever seen anything that's a different size or scale. So
Well, it
just
looks
what
like
it's
they
worth.
just stacked it two on top of each other in this picture, so.
So, but that could be something that maybe you could find out too,
Mhm.
if they have different sizes, because that could serve as a seat as well. You know,
What if we did stone?
I don't think that having stone, there's too much of a trip hazard, and stone is not what you want a toddler to trip in the sandbox and hit their head on. I would rather plastic or wood as a seating around that area because it's uneven surfaces for little kids who are already learning how to walk. I just think the chances of them tripping and smacking their head into
Yeah,
a
yeah, that's a good
sharp
point.
cone.
Can you remind me what the buffer zone for a swing set is? Is it 9 feet from perpendicular from the swing? Like, does it have to be does any structure have to be a certain distance from a swing?
I think I don't think anything that's outside of, that's onto the walkway or beyond it is going to be
There
within
are
the
certain
walkway.
recommendations. I think
The
it's
swing.
twice the height of the bar, if they call it. It has to be free of.
In terms of shade structures,
They've
or
got
I'm
the
just
stand-
saying-
Well, we don't know what standards they use, but there are several online that talk about that.
in terms of what sort of structure?
I just thinking about putting like seating, if this is the swing area and this is the sandbox, the sidewalk, and then we're thinking about moving it over a little bit, putting seating here. If it's raised, even like a wooden bench or even a stone bench, like he said, does there have to be a certain distance from where the swing is
I
to
think
here?
I think the whole safety zone is already
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
encompassed
of the
within
'cause of the
that because the
pathway.
walkway's there.
Okay,
I'm pretty
that's all
sure
I
that's
was
all.
wondering, yeah.
Okay, so next meeting, then we'll talk in more detail about sort of the design of it, and then once we have an idea of how we want to specify, this is what we're looking for.
Can I clarify just one thing,
Yes.
probably because this is only my second meeting? The DPW hasn't overseen every single project that's taking place at this park? Like building or construction?
Define overseen.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, they didn't
They
hire.
haven't hired, they aren't responsible for hiring everyone, and they're not, like, do they have to see the plans before they're implemented?
There weren't any absolutes put out that way, but we did share everything with them beforehand and then along the way throughout. Like, for instance, the natural play area was built by, the stone walls and pathways are built by Earthscape and Lawn.
Okay, and that was a vendor that the committee hired?
Right.
Okay.
Well, the Friends of Roberts Field hired.
And is the Friends of Roberts Field required to go through the same type of procurement for?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Just kind of did it.
I'm just curious.
It was also kind of donation. I
It was,
mean,
Right.
it was
mostly donated.
it was
right?
a
The climbing rocks were donated, but the rest of it was a paid job.
It's just in my personal work experience, the DPW is a union. They have a union, and they have certain dibs to jobs before you would contract it out to somebody who is not part of the town. I just didn't know if they had to give up a project before you're able to contract it out to an outside vendor.
I don't know. That question was asked and never really got a solid answer before everything started, so.
Just
I'm not
curious.
So once we have the specs, then we can start going down the path of trying to figure out how we get somebody to do the job.
So speaking of the DPW and getting people to do the job, I'm sorry if I missed during the updates. Do we have an update on the fencing and the shade structure timeframe? I know I saw them at the park this morning working on the berm. That's all I got from them, was that they were working on the berm.
So I asked Steve by email. I didn't get a response from Steve Yonley. Steve Callahan, I saw today while Jim and I were there trimming the tree. And Steve Callahan said that the fence contractors are going to be there on Monday, installing both the black vinyl chain link and the 6-foot wooden fence on the berm.
Are they putting in the shade structure before then? Because I thought that was the whole thing, that they didn't want to put this fence in
I didn't
first.
get an update on the shade structure. I don't know. Steve Callahan didn't know anything about the shade structure either.
What about the benches?
The metal benches, I didn't get an update. I wasn't provided an update.
At some point, is there someone other than DPW who we can talk to about the fact that this is months behind when we were informed that it would happen?
I guess, the town manager, you could speak with him, I guess.
I can't remember from the minutes, when was the date that you guys had expected those things to be completed by?
August. And then
So the fence was supposed to be July.
it was July. Well, it was honestly, it was June, and then July, and then it was August, and then it was September, and then it was October, and it,
But as long as they start on Monday, it's,
The last meeting was first week of October. That was the last update.
right.
So.
But it's always a few weeks away, no matter when the next meeting is.
So if we have the specs and stuff for this, then we can sort of figure out how we can move the process forward. Either if they are willing, if the DPW is willing to do the redesign and digging, contrary to what they've already said, that's great, or figure out how we can hire somebody and get that going. But I think having the specs and all and having the design in hand will make it a lot easier.
yeah.
I mean, if we want to I don't know if there's a better option than the black stuff that they already have. We're obviously going to need a lot more of the black stuff in order to do the version on the right
I
than we
think twice
have.
as much, roughly.
Well, at least, I mean, you have, I don't know if that black bar around the front by the digger is actually a black bar, or if it's just a direct line.
I couldn't break it.
Okay.
So you wouldn't put the black stuff by
Right.
the digger.
And I guess my other question is, do we have some benefit to having the sand up against the cement in at least one area for easy access?
Is it
I would
required
say
by
just
law?
by the digger.
For the digger, for the wheelchair
Yeah.
to pull up to, but other than that, I wouldn't say so. Because it's going to spill over into the sidewalk.
Right, I guess. Yeah.
So game plan is going to be discuss specs next meeting, and then have a final vote on what things we want to see in the sandbox and sort of how we would like to see it undertaken, and then we can try to move forward and see how we can get it done. Does that seem like a good game plan?
Works for me.
Everybody? Elizabeth, is that good? Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
I know a lot of landscapers in town through being on the Chelmsford news page that they recommended. I don't know if somebody could take on this project or not, so.
It's always an option too.
Okay,
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Nikki.
but- Okay, yeah, we can get together.
It doesn't seem like it would be a huge, I mean, I'm not a landscaper, but I think that it is possible and it's worth it, because someone falls the wrong way on that sand, it'll be bad.
I mean, from working out there doing the animal tracks and stuff, I mean, it was a constant flow of kids just face planting, just one after the other, running across by the,
By the swings.
well, no, by the digger, by the handicap digger. I mean, just one after the other, running and just having no clue that it was a danger at all, and just losing their feet and just wiping out.
I also don't know if grass next to the sandbox is the best thing either, because I feel like it would eventually, if it's flush, it'll end up just killing the grass that's near it. So I wonder if wood chips too would be a cheaper option as opposed to grass. But that's all out. I can include all these things.
I don't know, maybe there's some sort of
Thoughts
a
and
best case.
costs, yeah.
Best practices or sandboxes, I don't know.
The grass will probably grow right through the sand.
Yeah.
It seems like it's keeping it in check. If you look at, especially if you go out there and look, it's kind of hard to see in these, but like on I guess that's the northern part of it. There's a lot of spillover from the sand, but it seems like there's still grass growing in there too. So
Well, plus, if we build up the sides, right, as we talked about, we shouldn't have that problem.
and it should be lower, because everybody's kind of complaining that the sand is too high on the plastic stuff anyway, right?
Yeah, but I think that's just because they don't want it level. I think people want to have some sort of a.
Step down in.
I think they just want some
Yes.
seating.
They want some seating, they want a
blockage of their
barrier,
children
they
into
want,
the area.
Yeah. So, I mean, the sand can be level, that level. I think you can make the sand higher if you want, as long as you got it boxed in,
Right.
right?
Well, I guess, I don't know. It depends on, I think you want to keep it lower than it is now. I definitely don't subscribe to the idea that adding more sand to it is going to solve our problems.
No, I agree. Yeah, actually, it'll all just spill out by where the
It's going to make it worse.
digger is,
Right.
yeah.
And I don't think that not doing something is sustainable, because, having a hourly or a worker go out every, 3 times a week to sweep it back in place is not sustainable.
It's not ideal, no.
You volunteers.
It's not sustainable.
It's still just not a good design. We just need a better design.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to do. The real question is just getting someone and seeing if we can get an in-kind donation from a landscape company would be a great way to go.
We just need the specs first. We just need to know how do we want it to look, and then we can go from there.
I vote for 2 or 3 sided shape.
Yeah.
So next meeting, we'll talk about more specifics about what things we'd want to see. And then before we move on, there's Jim had pointed out that there's room in that grassy area on the northern part for a tree, and that'll mean something in the next slide. It'll add more shade too, right?
Right, there you go, okay.
Any more questions on this and the path we're on? David, did you guys have any questions? I'm assuming that piping water out of there is potentially troublesome to you guys. No?
Depending on where you put the water.
Where the water's going to go.
Right, yeah.
Piping into the front potentially.
I think if they were going to pipe it, you wouldn't want it to pipe it off to the left to dump it off into your yard. So
You can't, there's a law against that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I was
yeah.
saying, yeah, it would, yeah.
any other questions? Adding more shade. So this has been an ongoing thing over the last 2 meetings. We talked at the last meeting to kind of move forward with adding some more trees on the interior. Jim sort of scoped out some places around the 2 to 5 area that would be good locations for trees. He's identified 4 immediate locations.
Yeah, can you flip it back and I'll point it out to everybody? Yeah, I was thinking of putting one tree in here to get shade on this structure.
Jim,
Another one
you're
here.
standing in front of it. We can't.
Because this way is due south. So you get it in here, and here, that will give you some shade at the noontime when I think shade is most
That is,
important.
yep.
Possibly another one over here for early afternoon shade, and then another one over here for morning shade, 10 o'clock, whatever. Those are the 4 trees.
locations.
How many years until we'll get substantial shade?
Okay, oh boy, we never brought one. A couple of years ago, if you go, you know where St. Mary's Church is?
I don't know the names of any churches.
Okay, it's just,
I probably know. Just give me a street or a.
what is that, Boston? No, it's not Boston.
Talking about North Road,
No, I think it is probably North.
where all of the
Road.
churches are on. I mean, which.
Okay, I don't know churches either. But anyways, St. Mary's Church is a big one on the east side of the road. There's 2 trees that were put in, I put in 5 years ago. They went in at about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. They're now 35 feet tall and 25 feet wide.
How many years ago?
6.
Okay.
So, well, again, they were in a good situation. This is a difficult situation in here with all the compacted soil.
Yeah, I was gonna
Right.
say, it seems to really,
Yeah.
The trees I'm looking for take compacted soil, but whether they'll do as well here as they did in the church front yard, I don't know, but it's probably as good as you're gonna get. But you gotta be patient.
So 6 years, 6 to 8 years.
I think, so. Well, yeah.
If someone were to donate trees, what size tree would you like to be able to
If I were gonna
plant?
do it, I'd put a 1-inch tree in.
What if somebody wants to donate a larger tree? What size?
They don't do as well.
They don't do as well, okay.
The smaller the tree, the faster they adapt.
Yeah.
And probably over 10 years, the 1-inch tree would be much taller than something, say, a 3 or a 4 inch.
Okay. Mm-hmm,
You put the tree in, it just kind of sits there for a while.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So we were contacted by a local Girl Scout troop leader who I guess had spoken to somebody affiliated with the committee about planting a tree, and they would like to plant something either this fall or in the spring. They've got an approximate budget of about $250, and I think it fits with what we've talked about so far.
That's perfect. It's the
Yeah.
new generation of Stephanie.
Yeah, exactly. So Sandy had been speaking to Mahoney's about possible partnership opportunities. Given that it's the end of the tree season now and everything's sort of picked over, if we did move forward with Mahoney's, Jim had volunteered to go and sort of see what was the best of the availables in that 1 to 1.5 inch caliper trees, and then get back to us, to get back to them with an idea of here's what we could plant.
But they can also transfer from their big store in Winchester.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, if they're willing to donate, Jim and I could take a ride down to Winchester.
Sure.
Pick out trees and they could ship them up to Chelmsford, so.
Now, I'm looking at 2 specific varieties in this case. One is a Princeton elm, and I've already talked to Mahoney's, and they don't have a big store, a little store, whatever.
I think Winchester might.
Well, the lady I talked to said that they didn't, so I don't know.
Yep.
So I think the game plan would be that we would, if we're in agreement that we want to move forward with the Girl Scouts planting a tree, that we would try to find the best of what's available, and if we, or for some reason can't find something that's healthy and available now, postpone it until the spring, and they seem to be open to that, to plant it then. Do you guys agree with that tact?
Yeah, I do.
Works for me.
Okay.
Assuming we follow with where we've discussed putting them.
And then Jim would oversee the planting too, so there'd be, we'd have to break the compacted soil, and the other consideration would be that if we do end up redoing the,
Sandbox.
right, then it might, we might want to, if they only end up planting one, we might want to plant that one somewhere that's not going to be in the driveway of the stuff that gets dug out.
Maybe they plant theirs like in the place next to the swings. or
Correct.
something.
Right. Or on the other side, assuming it's not too close to where the concrete paddocks are going to go for the seating.
Could we go back to that first slide? Okay. they're probably gonna, if you're gonna drain it, it's probably gonna go over to here. I would assume they're probably gonna go here and then directly under the sidewalk, and then around here.
Okay, I don't know, and I don't even know if that's the tack that they would take, or if it would be breaking through the compacted soil and adding some kind of subsoil drainage
No,
thing.
I'm just, well, if you're looking for drainage, they wanna go, I would assume they wanna go perpendicular to the sidewalk, because that's the least space. Going under the sidewalk is probably gonna be the biggest problem.
You
Okay.
think they're actually gonna?
It's gonna be so
Do that.
expensive.
I'm sorry?
I just don't see them doing that, but.
Well, you gotta do it someplace. You either do it here, or you go out here and you do it. But you gotta cross the sidewalk to get to go downhill.
Do we actually see it happening where we get drainage off of the space, or we do
Well, I
better
think
to try
that's
to?
up to your
Or
plan.
do
as
we
to whether
do
you
better
want the
to try
drainage.
to get something into the compacted soil?
Okay, I don't know, to me, I don't know, if I were doing it, the first thing I'd do is see if I could bore through here.
Right.
It's kind of a chintzy cheesy job. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, you're not out much money.
Right.
But that's my thought. Drainage, you've got a slope, you've got to run a pitch of about 4%. You're gonna be down 9 to 10 inches below the sand, probably more than that. You've got some grading problems to do as to where that line is gonna come out.
Yeah, I don't see that
see the
all
drainage.
happening. I don't see us funding
So-
that big of a drainage situation. I think improving it is the best we can hope for. It's usable in terms of the drainage. I mean, it's not great what it is, but I think even if we do something with the subsurface, that's probably the best we're gonna get. I don't see spending thousands of dollars, or probably tens of thousands of dollars to do some giant drainage solution. I think we can improve it, but I don't see spending tens of thousands of dollars to focus on draining it out towards the brook through things we've already built up. That's my 2 cents.
So I think the takeaway is that we need to just sort of be aware of where if we are able to plant a tree this fall, that we try to find a location that's going to be least likely to be impacted by any kind of work if we end up doing this, right? So are there any questions on this? It's all sort of just kind of a moving project here. We're good with that? The Kinetic wind sculpture. This is a prototype drawing of what the sculpture might start to look out like. So this is going to be built by Christopher Ferreira and Joe McCarthy. They're working on the design now. This is actually using a design with just one type of leaf. They now have 9 different types of leaves, and also some butterflies and dragonflies and bees. And all of those things are going to be laser cut out of steel and then finished. They're going to, go ahead.
So, I thought there was some question about getting this at this point, which is why the gazing balls went into the other garden. Was there not a question about getting this?
There was until 2 days ago when I finally got this actually yesterday, this drawing. So it seems like it's more of a definite than not. And I think the way that it worked out, I think the having this in the butterfly garden stylistically works better, because it's going to have butterflies on it and movement and sort of that. But also because we can surround it with taller, either flowering or grassy stuff, if that ends up being the case, it'll keep kids away from the moving parts.
Will the moving parts attract or keep away butterflies?
I'd have to ask a butterfly. I don't know.
I don't think so.
It'd be like a tree moving.
It's also not going to, locating it in the butterfly garden is also not going to cause any kind of line of sight obstructions too. And then also with the gazing balls in the middle, I think it really works well with the kids walking around, because they can see, sort of keep their eyes on themselves and the balls as they, from different areas around it.
How tall is the pole from the ground to the first?
So it was, I think it was 6 to 8 feet tall. I forget what the height was. And then that particular design is 31 inches roughly of moving stuff. But I think it could actually, if we have it surrounded by taller stuff, I think it could actually, and that would put it, I think that was 5 to 6 feet off the ground. So you'd have to be 5 to 6 feet and then you would touch the moving stuff.
Okay.
I think you could put it probably 4 to 5 feet, buy yourself another extra foot or two. Because you could literally surround it with plants that would be a barrier to getting up close to it. If people when kids climbed on top of the raised garden. So that's kind of where that is now. They expect to be able to start welding at the end of November on the prototype, and then potentially, if the ground's not frozen, having a November, December installation. Not set in stone by any means, but that's at least what we're shooting for now.
And if not, then just spring. Yeah.
Or, yeah, if the ground's frozen, it'll be spring, because it'll basically go into a sonotube.
So it's going to be a total of, what, 10 to 12 feet high
I think
on top of, total from the ground?
from the ground, I would say 10 to the top, high.
What is the material?
Steel.
Shiny metal?
Yes, a mixture. So they can, they're planning on, I don't know what they call it, iodizing or something, I don't know, treating, anodizing so it's not just steel, it could be aluminum too. Having some leaves, some colors, and some bugs, certain colors, and kind of having a mix. But no paint, it would all be finish.
Innate metal.
Yeah, like polished, like the balls are polished stainless steel, so they might have polished stainless steel things to match that. It's all to be worked out. But at least as we talked so far, no paint. Any questions on those?
No, that looks good.
I just kept this as a placeholder just to remind everyone that we'll need to be working on a campaign to encourage people to ask the governor to release the funds in the spring. So if anybody wants to help work on that, please let me know. We'll have kind of like an email campaign that we did for the CPA funds, where you can click on a link and it'll send a pre-populated email to the decision maker on the not the governor, but the person in the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs that will allocate all this stuff. And then also a letter writing campaign.
What would be used for the 500,000? Is
Dredging
that
the
going to be the
pond.
sports fields?
Right, that's everything else outside of the
The rest of the
playground.
master plan.
Right.
Dredging the pond being the number one hard hitter, heavy hitter.
Any questions on that? Maintenance plan. So Jim has put together a draft of one too many, sorry. Maintenance plan. If you want to present that.
And this is just some thoughts I had about a maintenance plan. And if you recall back, one of the main problems with the old field, the old situation, was poor maintenance. And so I thought that maybe get some improvement in how the things are maintained. I just started writing, and again, from my experience, a maintenance plan, you trust that it's going to work out, you know that it's going to have to be changed at the end of the year. You're always going to be updating, something is going to come up that you never thought it would be, but anyways, you go into it with a flexible thing. My basic idea is you keep the plants healthy. That's the first step to keep them surviving and fairly attractive.
Can I ask about the broad-leaved weeds such as dandelions?
Right.
What do you mean only to be treated when weeds are present?
Right, well,
Also, a weed is only a weed if you don't want to plant, I mean, there's
right,
no
yeah,
definition of a weed.
white man's
And
weed is a
frankly,
young man's wildflower.
dandelions are edible and would have a
Some people-
appropriate
well, again,
place
this would
in
be up for
a
the
sensory
board to
garden.
decide, is it a weed or it's not a weed, otherwise you just.
I certainly wouldn't want people putting chemicals in the Five Senses garden in the middle of a playground because
Oh,
it's
no,
a dandelion.
No, you probably wouldn't, no, definitely wouldn't want to do that. But there are, if you want a good sod, kids to play on without getting into the mud and everything, you probably want to get rid of your broadleaf weeds. Now, this is just for discussion for you folks. These are some thoughts that basically crossed my mind. You know, you're gonna have problems with crabgrass if you're irrigating. One comes with the other. Then problem is, crabgrass dies out probably in September, and then you're bare until the following year, probably sometime in late May, early June. You don't have, you know, you can't have crabgrass and regular grass. At least in my opinion, but that's up to you folks. The idea of mowing high, they've already, I'm sure that this is built into their system. Whether they keep the blades sharp is something else again. The clippings, sweeping, edging, and again, you'll see on some of them, I've got twice a month, once a year. That would be for you folks to decide how frequently you want to see it done. Lawn fertilizer, get a soil test, go from there. By the way, I did take a soil test on the trees, sent that off. That came back, and there's going to have to be some lime applied, pretty good amount actually. Soil's rather acid, and a little bit of fertilizer. Most of it's pretty standard water and irrigating, which is again, hopefully the irrigation plan will be designed for the trees as long, in addition to the turf. Most of the time you have kids running around, you're gonna have bare spots, it's gonna need to be overseeded.
Question about lime
Yeah.
and its safety in a playground.
It's perfectly safe. If lime isn't safe, there's nothing in the world.
Well, I mean, it's caustic, right?
It's ground rock. No, it's lime. It's limestone.
Okay.
They just take lime and they grind it up and sieve it out. And you put it down and it changes the pH of the soil.
Okay.
Maybe you're thinking of hydrated lime,
Maybe.
which is
Okay.
not what you'd ever want to use. And again, these are put on at specific amounts at specific times. Mulching, strongly suggest mulching underneath the trees instead of trying to grow grass. Grass doesn't grow underneath the trees, and the next thing you know, somebody says, well, let's start thinning the trees out, and pretty soon you don't have any trees, but you have a nice patch of grass. Annuals and perennials, I think Sandy would be the person to put in the details on this. That's not really my field. And then I had some other things that I was just, maybe they would fit, maybe they wouldn't. As far as bittersweet is concerned, I don't know. Having seen what's going on out there, I think it's going to be a problem. Maybe it's not. Japanese bamboo, you got a couple of nice clumps out in front. And then there'll probably be other invasive weeds that you can put on it. nut sedge is gonna be a problem. Some of it just depends on where you draw the line. Is it a weed or it's not a weed? Is it a problem or not? And then insects, I don't know if there's a problem out there with ticks.
Yes, or
I
there
don't know if
there
this-
was with the previous playground. I haven't actually seen any.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so.
think it's, since it was cut back so much, it's been.
Yeah, I haven't
Okay,
seen
so
any
maybe
since
this
we've
is-
redone.
Notice there's a question mark after it. Mosquitoes, I don't know if I haven't had any problems with them, but maybe there is, I don't know. Brick walkway, you know, how often do you want to weed that? You saw what a great improvement there was when Bill, what'd you do, use a steam cleaner or a power washer or something?
It looks
That
worse now.
really, you know, that made that thing pop.
And now it looks terrible. Now it's all overgrown again.
Yeah, well,
Happens
it's
fast.
maintenance.
It does.
you know. And then other issues, I don't know, I was recently over to Newton Town Hall, and I tried to walk across the grass, and I had a real tough time finding places to put my feet where there wasn't goose poop. So they can be a real problem. Now, whether they would come into an enclosed area like the playground, I don't know. They do like nice grass. So anyways, you'll also see that there's some lines at the bottom. You have any thoughts on additions, subtractions, whatever, let me know. Now, we talked to Steve Callahan today about maintenance, and he was gonna draw up a maintenance plan, and hopefully he will take this an addendum to his maintenance plan.
That would cover the equipment, right?
Right, yeah. And I'm sure that there's some other issues that he probably wants to look at. I look at it as a start. It's not perfect, but it's a place to start. Any questions or comments?
That looks
Either
great.
now or in the future, let me know. I'm sure that there's something I've missed. But,
No, it's good, thanks for putting it together.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
no,
So
it's all right.
is this seem like a format that everyone likes for the maintenance plan?
Yeah, I mean, it covers.
What do you mean before? I mean, it's a lot to consume in a brief sitting.
But as the growing
good.
season goes on, we can adjust it.
Yes.
Whether we might have to go in deadhead every day or weed
Right.
every day. So
You know,
we will
some of that stuff is
yeah.
just,
Right, yeah.
and some of it comes down to, you know, champagne taste and a beer budget.
I was gonna say, who's expecting to be doing?
Well, I think some of this is gonna have to be done by the town, clearly the mowing.
So does the town have grounds, a plan for the grounds, just in general, that they've been working off of for years? Like,
Have what?
the town does it have a grounds, has a grounds department, I'm guessing, right, for the DPW?
Oh,
That would
right,
handle
yeah,
the
yeah.
mowing of the
Facilities, they call
Roberts,
it. Yeah.
Roberts Field, and then take care of any mowing within the park?
Yes.
Okay.
It's facilities, that's what they call
Okay,
facilities.
okay.
And they typically mow, I don't know, it varies by season, but they typically mow every 2-3 weeks in the
Yeah, I would.
growing
assume so.
period in the summer. They haven't mowed inside the playground yet, but the plans are that they would mow inside the playground.
It hasn't really needed it yet.
It's no grass, yeah.
Yeah, there's no grass, so
Yeah.
nothing to
It
mow.
hasn't been an issue. But is this, format-wise, is this fit with expectations for a plan? I mean, not the detail necessarily, but just the style of it. Is this what you guys wanted to see? Do you have something else in mind?
And as far as who does it, it could either, a lot of it could either be volunteers, or you could get a contractor to come in and, hey, that's what I assume the lacrosse and the the
Baseball?
baseball people are gonna do. That was my understanding from conversations
For what, I'm sorry?
earlier, for maintenance on the turf. They were gonna contract it out to have it fertilized and weeded and.
Oh, okay, I don't know. I mean, I assume that baseball would take care of the infields, but I don't know.
I know there were some projected costs that they had
Oh, yeah, from the
received.
master plan.
So I assume that they're going, and I hope they're going in that direction, otherwise they're gonna end up with the same problems they've
Right.
got now.
Yeah, we haven't talked to, I don't think anybody's talked to them about paying for, who's gonna pay for what and how that's all gonna be undertaken yet. But I think this is a good start,
Yeah.
but it would, get us talking in that
And,
path.
and you can take it down, break it down into, generate costs or budget or whatever, throw it on a spreadsheet.
Okay.
Getting back to the pesticides on the front page, where were you picturing pesticides ending up being used?
Oh, well, if you're gonna go after, like I said, if you're gonna try and keep a fairly decent grass, you're gonna have to go after the broadleaf weeds and then the grassy weeds. So it would be, I would assume, probably on the grass, but only if it's necessary.
Pesticides are for insects though, right? So it's
Right.
really herbicides.
A pesticide kills and controls a living organism, so it's a broad thing. Yeah, insecticides kill insects. Nematicides kill nematodes. Herbicides kill plants. Rodenticides kill rats.
And pesticides is the broad name
Yeah, just
for
something
all
that's
that?
meant to kill or control another organism. Yeah.
I guess I would want to be very, very conscientious about how we have pesticides done within the confines of the playground.
Definitely.
Well, the playground, in order to be done, the playground would have to be shut down. Now, it probably could be done early in the morning, but at the minimum, you want to let the material dry.
Yeah, I'm trying to see
Is there anything that's, I don't know,
playground
kid,
required.
pet safe pesticides, or does that not exist?
There's organic stuff there's organic directions to go with grass management.
Right.
We use a company that does organic tick and mosquito control in our yard, and it's worked very well. They have whole plans at that company for how you can manage grass more organically, and there are various companies that do that, and I would personally think that we should look into that, because I think in a confined area where you have kids running around,
Right, I think parents would be concerned about it.
I don't see it being worthwhile spraying chemicals to get rid of weeds if your kids are sitting in, I don't know. It's not,
Inside the fence line.
Right.
yeah, I just don't see pesticides inside the fence line as being,
So we should look for an
Something
organic
we should
safe
do.
alternative.
I'm
If
sorry?
it's nec- if
We
it's
should just look for an
necessary.
organic safe alternative if it's necessary.
Right. I mean, they treat playing fields with that type of thing.
I have
but-
used both conventional pesticides and quote-unquote organics, and personally, I don't really care as long as it works.
Right.
And some of the organics work beautifully, and others, they're a complete and total waste of time.
yep, there's different ways to do things.
Right.
Some of them work, some of them don't. I just
Right.
think that we shouldn't be introducing chemicals into the
Right.
play area unless we absolutely need to. There's a lot of not only young children, but compromised children who are going to be playing at an inclusive playground. And I just don't think that there's any, I would rather have all the weeds in the world than bring chemicals unnecessarily in.
So should we add then to the line 17 as a means of last course, or whatever the verbiage would be, to say that we shouldn't use pesticides unless we absolutely have to, or it should be the last course
Well,
of
that's
action?
already implied in the whole thing,
Okay,
but,
I think there has to be
and then again, whether it's an organic pesticide or not,
I-
you know.
I'm not just talking about pesticides that are, there's ways to manage grass without using, it's not my department of expertise. I just know that I have read into it enough that there are ways you can manage your grass that
You
don't
could just add a
include
line here
spraying
that says,
stuff.
through means safe for children and.
I would say that a vote needs to be
Sort
taken
of
as to
subject-
whether
I would
we,
say it's subjective.
Well, I think
Say-
right, safe is not a,
give this thing a chance to give it some thought.
Okay.
I mean, the DPW may have other
Well, I was gonna say,
plans
how
too,
much does
so,
the town
yeah.
oversee that type of
Right, I don't
application?
know.
I would say that they probably have staff that
Mhm. Yeah.
They farm,
have, well, they have regulations that the town uses on other areas of ground.
if you look at the pond, that is well fertilized and it's got weed control on it.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure they farm that out because I don't think anybody in town, outside of possibly the tree warden, has a pesticide license. And the state has come up with some new regulations even for fertilizers.
So, to Jim's point, can we individually go through this and make any sort of notes and come back at the next meeting and add some changes, and then we can share that with the DPW? Does that seem like a plan?
It works.
I would appreciate it if you read something and you don't understand it, let me know. Because sometimes I think I know what I'm saying, but nobody else does. So, you know, this is intended to be straightforward. Anybody can pick it up, read it, and understand what it's supposed to be.
Okay, and then at the next meeting, we'll have feedback
Sure.
for you, and then we can kind of move on from there.
And then, you know, again, it would tie in with whatever Steve is going to do.
Right. Okay, any other questions on the maintenance plan? Thank you, Jim. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you for taking the time.
Took a
Thank
great
you.
deal of time. 8:30.
Wow.
Hey!
Man of his words.
Fix is in.
So, next meeting dates. When do you guys want to meet again?
Oh, the 5th, 7th, or 8th
That seems close
does
to
not
now.
work.
Yes,
It
it
doesn't
does.
work for me anyway. I'm gone that whole week.
That's like 2 weeks from now,
Yeah.
right?
So we.
After Thanksgiving, maybe?
Yeah, the week of Thanksgiving, I'm gone. So it'd have to be after. Yeah.
Okay,
For me.
just which dates? Which dates work best?
So,
I would say Tuesday, the 27th.
27?
27 or 29.
Yeah, I'd say Tuesday or Thursday.
Okay. Is there a preference on Tuesday or Thursday? Is earlier week better than later, or?
We're all going to be recovering from Thanksgiving
Yeah,
on
later.
Tuesday, so maybe later, because there's going to be a lot going on that week to get back in the swing of things.
So Thursday, November 29th.
Yes, also Tuesday is my son's birthday, so Thursday,
Oh,
yes.
Definitely
There you go.
Thursday then.
Yes.
Yeah. Unless
It's
you
like
wanna
some
have the
reason
party
that's
here.
not, you know.
All right.
He's 2. There's only been 2 of them for me to remember.
Okay. So 29th it is. Any questions on that? Did everybody receive the email with the minutes for July 10th and have a chance to review it? Did anybody have any changes?
I did not.
I did not get a chance to review it.
Do you want to hold off on voting on them then?
I assume we were holding off on voting because we didn't have the secretary here. But so who? What is it? The other guy's name? I can't.
Justin Whitehouse.
Yes. Are we expecting him to be showing?
He said he might be here. He wasn't sure.
Okay. I was wondering whether because he's been at one meeting.
I believe so.
Okay. In terms of having a consistent secretary going forward.
Are you volunteering?
No. I'm just trying to figure out what our plan is.
So do
You
we
don't
not
want
want
me
to
being
vote
the
for July
secretary.
10th?
It's not going to go well.
Could be anyway. I don't say. We're not going to vote on July 10th then, because you haven't had a chance to review them.
I wasn't here, so.
Then you could vote anyway. So you'd have to abstain. So we'd only have 3. So it would be a quorum. So we
do
can't
it.
vote anyway.
Can't
So
do it. All right.
decision made.
There we go.
We'll hold off until we get the last meeting, the September 17th meeting too.
Okay.
And that is it. That's our meeting.
All right.
I
Any
feel
other?
like we're missing some whole chunk
have a
because
question.
we should be here for another hour before our
Right, we
normal-
should be here till like 10 o'clock.
If we can look and find some appropriate trees.
Someone asked you.
Yeah, I thought that was the game plan. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, then there's a go-ahead to do it
So go and
before
try
the
and
next meeting.
to try and find some suitable candidates for the Girl Scouts to plant within their. She said her
Now, do
budget
they
was.
want to plant them, or?
So she said her budget was around 250, so
Okay.
you know how much we have high-end to spend. I think they're open to planting one or more within that
Okay.
budget. And I think that you would be supervising the planting to make sure that the
Yeah,
soil was properly aerated or
Right. yeah.
tilled.
I guess my thought is if we're gonna do it, it's gotta be done before your next meeting. Is that?
I think
are
it should be
you folks
done,
comfortable with that?
Oh, because of the frost and everything? Is that
Huh?
because of the ground freezing and everything?
Right.
Yeah.
well, what we'll have to do is we'll have to potentially find a suitable candidate, a suitable tree, and then present that suitable tree to the Girl Scout troop and see if they're interested in moving forward with it at whatever price point that ends up being. And then if they are, then we'll, because it's
Okay.
gonna be their project, we're just trying to kind of help them
Yeah.
and
Okay.
make it work.
So do we want to agree on a location, though?
I don't think yet, but because we don't, I think it's one of those 4 locations that would not be impacted by the,
What's the fourth one?
Over by the rocks and the sign on the east side.
by the old plaque.
Would you be able to send out an email just like with the map and saying, here's the 4 locations? Or?
I thought I already
Or you
did.
already did?
Well, I can only think of the 3. The one,
Oh, okay. Could
the
you?
one by the
I might have missed
sand,
it. sorry.
the one by the
You're up,
sandbox, the one by the sandbox, the one by the swings, or the one by the slide by the bricks. What's the
Right,
fourth?
and then
What's the
there
fourth
was
one?
The last one we were talking about that was on the east side.
Let me see if I can find,
Jim, what type of the 4 trees are you?
I'm looking at 1 river birch and 3
Let me get back.
Princeton elms.
For those 4 trees, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the difference? What's up with the one river birch?
Right.
What's the river birch versus the?
And 3
Oh, there we go.
Princeton
Yeah.
elms, okay.
River birch, I was thinking of getting a clump, which
Yeah.
would give you a wide spreader and give
Yeah.
you more shade early in the morning.
So,
Drone, we could get another one.
yeah, I wanted to wait until we had the fence in place, though.
Oh.
I didn't want to have them.
Well, basically, here's your round and round, and I was thinking of somewhere in this area here. It would depend more on the shape of the tree than anything else to try and get some morning shade on this structure here.
right, and the other 3 spots?
And then, one would be about here,
Right, so that's one I was calling by the sandbox, that's the one I was calling by the
one about
swings.
here,
Right.
and then one over here.
But not
Oh.
in the mulch bed.
No, there's a space of grass next to the mulch bed.
Yeah, right.
But, so there's 2 basically over by the swings?
Yes.
All right, that's what I
One
was
here,
missing.
one here. Probably I don't know, priority probably, if we could get it, would be the Princeton elm here. And then here. But it depends on what's available
Right.
and what the quality is, if, you know, because usually at this time of the year, they're pretty sad. They've been sitting around since April and they haven't been sold and.
Well, Mahoney's got some new ones in the past 6 weeks, but they would only let me have them for a third off,
Yeah, well,
so,
it would depend on what
yes. Oh, yeah, mm-hmm.
I'm going to be very strong about this. I want to see the job done right or not at all.
And I think, I
And
feel
you've got to
confident.
start out with good quality plant material. These
Right.
freebies, yeah, that's what they're worth.
I vote we put one of the 2 swing set side trees, because the other one is gonna be over where they're putting bricks in later, or the sandbox that we're gonna be messing around with, so I think the ones over by the swing set are least likely to be affected by current plans, assuming the berm is in and done.
Okay.
I mean,
I don't think we need to necessarily define where it's going to go tonight, because it,
well, if we're not meeting again before they put it in, we're not gonna get a chance to.
we can have a discussion about the location if it does progress that fast.
Well, I think the ground's gonna be frozen before the
Well, I
next
think the
meeting.
first step is let's see what's available and we go from there.
Right. I mean, because a lot could change if they end up, if they do end up running a drainage tube from the sandbox to the front of the property. it could go right through that area,
Uh-huh.
so
Do you see that actually happening?
that was Steve's suggestion, so.
Is he gonna pay for it?
But he wasn't.
He
Gonna,
asked me.
but he wasn't going to do it.
I'm just saying that was just the discussion, so.
Yeah.
But he's also not suggesting that they would do it. I just don't. I mean, it's got to cost tens of thousands of dollars.
He
to
said
rent
3 to
something
4, so I don't know. I've never priced these things out, and I don't know the scope of work, so maybe there's stuff that they can do that makes it more cost effective. I don't know. I think we're just gonna have to kind of go down this path and see. And to Jim's point, I don't think anybody wants to see it rushed, and have a poor quality tree or location chosen that's gonna negatively impact the tree. down
I
the road,
agree.
so.
A few minutes ago, we were talking about how it was going to happen before our next meeting because the ground was going to freeze. So
I don't
that's
think that
why I
was what I
wanted
heard,
to have
but-
a. Things
Well, you were
seem
saying
to
if
happen
you were,
between
you were
meetings
asking
for that
if
discussion.
you could get the trees and get them in
If,
before.
if something really spectacular, really good quality plant shows up, do we pull the trigger or not?
I think if you let us know that happens, then we can
Yeah,
decide, I guess. Because right now, I don't think we have the capability to say yes or no.
And a lot of it really honestly depends on what the Girl Scouts want to do too, because.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it
they're
all
paying
has
for
to
it.
go through them.
Yeah,
Right. But I think we also owe it to them and to everybody else to make sure that we've got our plan in place for how we're going to deal with the sandbox and then the seats as well. Because even though those aren't in the direct line of where the concrete paddocks are going to go, it's still going to be, they're going to have machinery getting in and out of that, so.
is there a benefit to planting the trees now versus the spring, or there is?
Probably 3 weeks ago there would have been, but now it's probably a break-even deal.
Probably very good.
So, we'll see. Let's gather the
My
information.
own thoughts are, I talked to a number of my former colleagues, and, they were saying hold off until the spring when we get good quality nursery stocked in.
Let's gather the information with the understanding that we're not going to pick or place a location until we've discussed it further. Fair enough?
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't want to leave here and then have us show up at the next meeting and find out, well, we got a tree and we put it in because there was no conversation about it because it happened.
So we're only getting 4 trees, right? And the Girl Scout tree, that's gonna be 5?
No,
No.
we're not set on any numbers. We're just talking about, they're probably only gonna end up planting 1. So we don't know.
Right. But Jim's looking for 4.
No, that's kind of a
Okay, that's,
It's a jumping off
pie in the
point.
sky
okay, gotcha.
thing. Actually, with the Girl Scouts, I'm looking at one tree for $250.
And it's a jumping off point too, because you had actually identified, I think, 13 different spots.
Oh, yeah, let's just stick with,
Right.
you
So
folks
it could grow.
at the last meeting seemed to be more comfortable with putting shade on the 2 to 5-year-olds than some of the other locations that might be.
So what you told me originally, the 2 trees, if Mahoney's goes along with this and grants us, say, $1,000, okay? The 2 trees you wanted were in the message you sent to me way back when, right?
We're gonna let Jim look at the inventory and then make a recommendation
Okay,
on
okay, that's
what we
fine,
want to.
okay, yep.
If
What
we
we
have,
plan.
if they want us to go over to their main shop, that's
Yeah,
fine.
okay, yep,
Field trip.
good. Awesome.
Just to
I have 3 people who are already lined up to help plant.
Oh,
And
good.
we have a potential 4th, okay?
Trees or plants?
The plants, yeah.
We need the plant list. We can't do anything until we get a
Gotcha.
plant list.
I will get one. I'll
So at
get
this
one
point, it's
on
probably
these.
going to be spring.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
It's going to be spring before anything goes in.
I bought a lavender to plant. Don't want to keep it on my porch all winter.
We just need a plant list.
Yep.
Well, it looks like I'm gonna slap 2 beech seedlings in the ground, get them through the winter until we get them planted.
Okay. I
All
can
right.
always plant it where I live.
So,
okay.
any other questions on this?
Pop it in the ground.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion to adjourn if anybody has
One
one.
second.
Or
Right, we'll adjourn.
Aye.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You've got my